And this isn't about you being in charge of the department or having 10 people on your team. The first person that you have to lead is lead yourself. Yes. Right? Because the better and healthy you are, people will see that. They're going to mimic the good behavior or the bad behavior. And then people will just see what you're doing and they'll follow you if they believe in you and trust you. And building trust with your teams, those are, longer conversations.
All right, welcome to the Good CARMA Podcast. My name is Rob Patton, and I'll be conducting this interview solo today because my partner, Rob Kramer, is off-site. But we're really excited about today because it's on the eve of an event that we are hosting tomorrow in partnership with one of our constituents out into the field. We'll find out more about that here in a minute. But it's going to be exciting. We're jazzed up. We're holed up in a hotel room right now, shooting this clip, and super excited about it. I'm really excited to share with our viewers who we have as a guest today, because our relationship is a little unique in a sense on how it played out, but I'll let him explain that. But for now, I just want to take a minute and introduce Jeff McGreevy. Jeff, what's going on, bro?
It's good to be here, man. It's fun. I'm excited about this. It's going to be fun.
It really is, and I'm just super excited that it's almost surreal that we're hanging out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Just the way things have played out. But before we get there, I think it's important that the audience knows who Jeff McGreevy is. So if you could just give us an overview of like where you're from, where you grew up, what led you into law enforcement, and essentially how did you end up here today?
Yeah, great. So Jeff McGreevy, I was in law enforcement for 29 years. And prior to that, I was in the Marine Corps. So I joined the Marines when I was 17, in my senior year of high school. And then I was in the academy when I was 21. I served for, like I said, 29 years in law enforcement. I worked for 2 different departments. But going back to the origin story is I grew up in Long Island, New York. So I'm originally an East Coast kid. And lived with my grandparents till I was about 9 years old. My mom remarried, and we relocated to Southern California. So in 4th grade, me and my brother and my mom, we relocated to Ventura County, California, and lived there until I was in high school, left for the Marine Corps, and then started my law enforcement career. So I've been in Ventura County for the last 45 years or so now. But originally, I'm still a Yankees fan. I'm still a Yankees fan. When they're winning.
When they're winning,
Yeah.
Of course, that does matter. What agency did you start with?
Yeah, so I started with Simi Valley PD. When I got into law enforcement, I actually had no idea what I was doing. Because you asked me like, well, how did you get in the field? Why did you do it? So when I was in the Marine Corps, we were coming off of Desert Storm, okay, the first Persian Gulf War, and I started applying with first responder agencies, and the idea was that I had served my country, maybe I could go home and serve my community. That's what the thought was, and I have a high school education. I had some skills that I learned from the military. I was still very young, and I wasn't quite sure what my future would be if I got out of the military. So I thought that if I could become a police officer and come back and serve the community in some capacity, that would be the way to go. And so I applied to multiple departments, and luckily the Simi Valley Police Department hired me. I had never been to Simi Valley a day in my life before I got hired there. I grew up in Oxnard. Simi Valley is all the way on the other side of the county. I don't even know if I'd ever been there before in my life until I started having my interviews. And this is back, I started in 1991, okay? And the way I applied for jobs was and I know you were out there, you're not that far behind me, but there was ads in the newspaper for these police departments, and the classified ads on Sunday of these departments that had a little ad that this was the day of the test, this is where it was going to be, and this is where you go apply. And that's how I started applying for law enforcement jobs. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have another family member that was in law enforcement. I just figured it out and got hired by Simi Valley. Worked there for about 6 years, and then I lateraled to Oxnard.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about your career in Oxnard. How'd you come up through the ranks?
Yeah. So I worked for the safest city in America per capita, which is Simi Valley, California. They came on the map because of the O.J. Simpson, not the O.J., the LAPD trial, the officers from Rodney King.
Yep.
There was a change of venue and they went to the Simi Valley courthouse. So that's what, put Simi Valley on the map in the early 90s. So I'm a rookie officer, and this mayhem starts happening in the aftermath of the verdict of that trial. And then Simi Valley, though, is a very safe community. And when you're in your mid-20s, it's a very slow and boring place to work in the middle of the night because there's not a lot of crime going on, So I got bored, and I wanted to, and I'd be listening to the scanner, and Oxnard PD was rocking and rolling, man. They were in pursuits multiple times a night, and there was crime happening, and these guys were doing stuff. And so I had some buddies that worked over there, and I just wanted to go work for a bigger department that was busier. And so I made this decision to go take $1,000 a month pay cut to go do more work. And, but it ended up, working out in the end.
Oh, that's good, man. Super interesting. And my understanding is you were a canine handler towards the end of your career. Can you tell us?
Well, we're in the middle, if you will. So yeah, when I went over to Oxnard, part of the reason I went there too is I wanted to get on their SWAT team. So they were going to a kind of a quasi full-time model. So I was on SWAT I was patrol, and I did 2 years of SWAT in Simi Valley, and the Oxnard team was going to kind of this quasi full-time status. And so I wanted to lateral over there. My goal was to try and get on that SWAT team, which happened. So lateral, I did a year in patrol, and then they had an opening for a SWAT and what they called SEU, their Special Enforcement Unit. And I got picked up for that. So I spent 8 years in the Special Enforcement Unit. And that 8 years was kind of the trifecta of awesomeness. I was in the gang unit full-time, I was on the SWAT team, and then halfway through that I got a canine. So I was a canine handler in the gang unit on SWAT, all at the same time.
What in the world? How did you control your emotions at the time, man?
I tell everybody I had beautiful brown hair before I became a canine handler,
but that's hilarious. And then, sorry to cut you off. Do you have more to add?
No, I was just going to say, like, the first half of my career, you think operations, tactical, so with patrol, SWAT, gangs, canine. And then at about the 14, 15-year mark, I went back to patrol, and I became an FTO late in the game. Usually field training officers have 2, 3, 4 years on. I had 14 years on when I became a field trainer. So I was like the old guy but I had a lot of good experience that was helpful. It was different. And then from that, it was like, okay, bodies started to get tired, a lot of, years on the knees and the back, and started thinking about promotions and doing other things. So got an opportunity to go to detectives as a gang investigator. So all we did was investigate violent crime and gang. My cases were all gang involved. So if there was some, the suspects or the victims were gang members, then our unit investigated those cases, plus some other high-profile things. I worked robbery for a short time, but I did those things for about 2 years, wrote a lot of search warrants, got a lot of great investigative experience, and then I promoted for the first time. So I went to senior officer, which is a two-striper, like a corporal position. That took me to a completely different place, which was community policing.
Oh, yeah.
So I went from the gang unit and patrol to the community policing. And I thought I was going to hate it. I thought I just wanted to do my time there. And I actually loved it because I actually like talking to people and I like building relationships. And when you talk about our journey, how we met, several years ago, it's about building relationships. And I had always had a knack for doing that. And when I got into the community policing stuff, I really enjoyed that and got good experience there. And then the next promotion was to sergeant, became a field supervisor. Was in patrol for 2 years, and then went back to community policing, and I was a neighborhood policing team supervisor for about the last 5 years of my career until I retired.
Nice. Actually, I could see you thriving in that role, especially with your background. I mean, just having done a lot of the operational side of the house and then transitioning to the community side, I don't know, you seem like you'd be somebody that, would be a impactful supervisor in that role, just kind of setting the tone.
Yeah, and you see the good and the bad, and I was in this unit where you're just dealing with gang members and criminals all the time, and that is not healthy. for a long term. It's just, it becomes very unhealthy because you don't get to interact with the good people in the community, right? Because you say there's 2, 3, 4% of a community that maybe is this criminal element. It could be 1% in some places, but that's who you're dealing with all the time. And it's the other 90%, 95% of the community that they actually really support you and they just want to have a safe community and have a safe life.
Exactly. And so you talked about, you said healthy, things aren't healthy in police. Some things could be unhealthy in policing, especially over time and years when things just kind of stack up and pile up. And with CARMA being what we are, we're the California Affiliated Risk Management Authorities. We specifically provide services, support, training, and various different programs to law enforcement agencies. And when you retired, you started an LLC that we'll talk about here in a minute, but it's in the health and wellness realm.
Yeah.
And just based on our experience in policing, I mean, how many times, whether it's you or somebody you know that made a decision that wasn't the best one, and when you peel the layers back, you find some correlation leading back to health and wellness. And so why don't you tell our audience how Tombstone Courage came to be, which is the name of your company?
Yeah, so Tombstone Courage came to be. The short story I'll tell you is a big part of the second half of my career was peer support. So we talked about all this like your actual job, but then my collateral stuff was being part of the peer support program. And then the last 6 years of my career, I had the honor of being the peer support coordinator for my department, CIT coordinator, which is the crisis intervention training. So a lot of my role was mental health related, mental health out in the community, and then also things that were happening internally with our officers, our dispatchers, our support staff. So being a resource for them. And what I saw along my career was a bunch of people, really, really good people that I worked with that got damaged from the job and they needed help. Some of them needed help with stress, with trauma, with emotional trauma, with substance, with pain. And then they would go out on stress and they would never come back to work. It's like they would end up getting medically retired, or they have an injury. And when you're in your youth, when you're, the immaturity, like you don't understand what you're seeing sometimes with people that maybe that are older than you, or that go out on stress and people. And it's this terrible stigma about, well, I guess they're not tough enough to do the job, or they've got something wrong with them. And what the truth is that every cop and firefighter worth their salt has some level of post-traumatic stress, and it's just the way that they manage it. And departments and organizations like CARMA are really getting smart about how can we do a better job taking care of the people that we have, because you have more people going out the door that are coming in the door. When you and I tested to become police officers and deputy sheriffs, you probably were testing with hundreds and hundreds of people to get this job. And it's really hard to find good people right now, and everybody's competing for the same people. And what I see is that it's so much more important to take care of the people that you have millions of dollars invested in, to try and help them get to retirement. And there's a really sad statistic out there that I found. I've been retired now for 5 years, and a year or two before I retired, I found the statistic that said at the time, 1% of police officers work a 27-year career, reach the age of retirement, and retire on a service retirement. 1%. And it makes you realize how fragile this job is, because I don't have enough fingers and toes to count how many people that I worked with over the course of my career that went out on stress or got some injury, and then they weren't able to come back to work. Some of them don't want to come back to work because and that's okay. Look, there's some people that I truly believe that it could be it's the right decision to go and start doing something else because it's just the best thing for you. But then I think there was a lot of people that they just didn't get to the right place to get help for what they needed, and then they end up getting lost in the system.
Exactly. And so how did this lead, you're in retirement. Yeah. How did this lead you to Tombstone Courage? And, it's interesting for me because, we all have expertise, certain levels of expertise. We all have passion projects, but you actually took this to the next level, and you utilized all your training, education, experiences, and now you're bringing it to the field to help other people. And it's funny because I just saw a post on LinkedIn by Rob Jones,
Yeah.
one of Echelon Front's leadership instructors. He's a Marine. He's been through it. You have to look him up and see, but he's talking about post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic leadership, and how, right, when we experience negative things and we get better and stronger from it and we become more resilient, but that's fine for you as an individual. But what he was talking about was post-traumatic leadership, where I thought of you when he was talking about it, because you were taking all of your experiences and making yourself right? And then, but you're not just taking care of Jeff. Now you're bringing it to the masses to help others, which falls in that realm of post-traumatic leadership. So I thought it was interesting. So tell us how Tombstone Careers came to be.
Yeah, so it came to be because I get to go around the country and see all different kinds of training conferences, and I'd been to some good ones, I've been to some bad ones, I've been to some ones where it's like, you know what, maybe this was worth my time, maybe it wasn't. And over the years, I've built a lot of relationships with people. So back about 10 years ago, I started for the department hosting training conferences, and and I would do it through. The department would support it, but I'd find a nonprofit to kind of fund it. We'd run it through this nonprofit so that the city I didn't have to do all these contracts and things like that with the city. I kind of figured out how to play that game, but I started hosting some trainings and learning how to kind of run a conference, if you will. And then my goal when I would go to really good training, you brought up, Rob Jones and Echelon Front. I've been going to their training for almost 10 years now. And years ago, I wanted to bring their training back to my community so more Ventura County first responders could get exposed to this training, because I thought it was that good. So I hosted a couple, it's 3 times now I've had them come out. But the why is I wanted to bring really good training home to my brothers and sisters that are still working, that are cops, firefighters, dispatchers, paramedics, that are serving in our community, and bring them what I think is kind of some of the best training that we can bring to them. So that was really kind of the mission on why, and I believed I could do it. I kind of have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit where I'm not afraid to take risk, because there's a lot of risk doing this. I had to start a company, and I also wanted to have control of what I was doing, because there had been some other people I were working with in different groups where they were not aligned with me they had one view on what they wanted to do. I had a completely different view. And I knew I could move really fast and I could just execute this. Like, I can just do this. I have a Rolodex of all these great people that I can work with. And in the beginning, I started working with my friends. So I did the first Victory Mindset in Ventura County a year ago this month. We're pretty close to the day, a year ago, almost on the money within a couple of weeks. And I just wanted to do one in Ventura. And then a chief from a department up north called and said, hey, what would it take to bring a Victory Mindset up to our people? So we had a conversation about that. I do a lot of work in Las Vegas. So I worked with some of my partners in Las Vegas, and I just said, I'm going to bring Victory Mindset to Las Vegas. And I just worked really hard, leverage relationships. And there's a lot of trust. And like the reason we're doing what we're doing is because we have a really strong relationship, and that you guys trust me now that I'm going to bring you a really good training event, and it's going to be good for your clients, and it's going to be good for the first responder community in general. And it's through those different people that are seeing what I'm doing, is like it's helped basically word of mouth the event grow. We did 5 last year. We're going to do 6 or 7 this year in 2 or 3 states. And so I'm just really excited about what the future is. But it's taking a risk, because there's all these people that I'm bringing in, professionals, and scheduling all of their travel. And I work with my wife. My wife, we're, planes, trains, and automobiles, and everybody's got a speaking fee. And just, I'm, started working with my friends. And then I find some people that are really good that I want to work with. And then I'm really just trying to put together a team and just, bring this team to different cities, primarily on the West Coast right now, but and just bring the best possible training that we can, and then just keep adjusting, making little adjustments, and just keep trying to. And I want people to have a really good experience, at the event as well.
Absolutely, right? You want to give them the tools, tactics, strategies to help them, hone in and enhance their game, level up their game, but also maybe get some ideas on bringing things back to their own wellness programs at their agency and implement the things that you guys are presenting at Victory Mindset. And for our listeners, Tombstone Courage is the name of your company.
Correct.
But Victory Mindset Leadership and Resiliency Wellness Summit is the event we're hosting together jointly. And that's the beautiful thing about this whole endeavor is, just how we met. If you can talk to the audience a little bit about, dating back how we met and then how we united forces. And now we're, down here in the Bay Area on the eve of one of your Victory Mindset programs tomorrow morning. And so talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, talked about relationships being paramount, and probably 5 years ago now, it might be 6 years, but we were in an online virtual leadership group that Echelon Front was doing, and they have a first responder group, and then they have a weekly group that does different hour-long trainings, and we connected through that group, and we had some mutual friends. And you were with another organization at the time and helped link me up with people that were at the agency that you retired from. And then we just kept in touch. And I think the way that what's great about the bond is that we have some really similar background and experience, but then also leadership training is really important to both of us, because for me, when I started going to leadership training, I just wanted to be a better sergeant. That's kind of what I was looking for. I was looking for some training I wanted to be a better sergeant, be a better leader, and get some tools and tactics to help me get better at that. And then what I didn't expect from that was all of these friends that I was going to make through this network of private sector leaders and first responder leaders. Like another one of our buddies that's coming here is somebody that I met through the same pipeline that I met through you. He's a chief of police in Idaho. And this is my third event that, we're doing with Roger. And I never would have met him if it wasn't for that pipeline. Joel and Rebecca, I met Rebecca through Jocko Fuel, because Rebecca is a Jocko Fuel athlete. And I met her at an event in Texas, and I was, keeping in touch with what she was doing. And when I built Victory Mindset, there were a couple of core things that I wanted to be. So I wanted this thing to be about longevity, about the health of first responders, because I want them to be healthy doing the job, physically, mentally, but also to make it to retirement. Because I told you, like the odds are against you that you're going to make it to retirement. So being healthy, psychologically fit as well to get to retirement, and then when you get into retirement, to be a healthy and happy person, and not just take all this baggage with you from the job. We want to teach people how to off-gas some of that, things to do proactively, to start working on unpacking some of that trauma that every officer, if you've worked 20, 25, 30 years, you have been exposed to a lot of trauma. We know that. Some people are really good and healthy, and they've got good hobbies and habits, and they exercise a lot, and they've got a great family. There's also people that have a lot of trauma that they don't want to talk about. They've been divorced. They could have a substance problem or an alcohol problem that they're, self-medicating with alcohol or pills, or guys that get, unfortunately, addicted to meds because they have back surgery, knee surgery, and then all those things just start piling up on top of each other, and they can get really unhealthy. So longevity piece is really important. The mental health piece is really important. And the other part of what we do is bring a bunch of resources to our events. So we bring in resources that we trust and know, that we also want them to hear the great speakers that we have, but then we also want them to go network with these different organizations that do work with public safety.
Absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about our speakers tomorrow?
Yeah.
The lineup that you have in store for
my powerhouse lineup.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, so I'll start with Joel and Rebecca. They were one of the foundational blocks. When I designed this program, I'm like, I want to have Joel and Rebecca be part of what I'm doing. So one of the topics is nutrition, strength, and conditioning. They call their presentation Mission Readiness. So Rebecca is a professional weightlifter. She's a Jocko Fuel sponsored athlete, and her husband is a 21-year Marine Corps officer who is retiring next month. He's after 21 years of service, he's was seriously injured in an IED blast in 2007 or 2009. Got a traumatic brain injury, and so incredibly resilient person. But they do our nutrition, strength, and conditioning for public safety. And then my great friend, another person that I started this thing with, is Dr. Sherilyn Lee. She's a police psychologist. She's out of Santa Barbara County. She works for the sheriff's office full time. She is incredible. She speaks all over the country about post-traumatic growth. There's a lot of things that she speaks to public safety about, but she only works with cops. And she is just, and she builds her rapport really easily with a crowd, and people like her. And she just has a great presentation. My friend Roger Shy, so Roger is a chief in Pocatello, Idaho. He has a presentation called Mindsets for Victory. That one's really important because he's going to talk about an officer-involved shooting where two of his officers were wounded in a gunfight. It's a miracle that they both survived, but how their mindset and the principles of extreme ownership and the Mindsets for Victory helped not only those officers, but everybody that was involved in this incident, including him as the chief of police, managing this in the aftermath. And these things go on for years. It's not like, hey, you get wounded and 3 weeks later you're all better. There's a lot of things that have to get repaired physically and emotionally after, you face down, the wrong side of an AR-15 with a guy that wants to kill you. And then he had a serious injury that happened off duty that, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to recover from. But Roger's like, everybody that works with us is strong and healthy. Roger probably did 28 pull-ups before, he got on the plane this morning. And then the last instructor that we have is Amanda. Her name is A.K. DeZante. I call her A.K. But A.K. is out of Ohio. She was a deputy sheriff in Ohio, and she wrote a book called Beat the Burnout. And she went through her own mental health challenges. She was working, they had her working underage cases, basically where she was a decoy when she was right out of high school, and then she becomes a deputy, and she just had a lot of trauma. And she had to get out of law enforcement after 5 or 6 years. She did another career, and then she started refocused on wanting to support public safety because she knows there's a lot of people out there with stories like hers. And I personally, I won't go down this road about, my experiences, but part of the reason why I do what I do is that I've had my own challenges with mental health, meaning post-traumatic stress. I was involved in a shooting early in my career. The second shooting incident I was involved in, my partner was 3 feet away from me when he shot a suspect that we were attempting to arrest. We were doing a jump bust. It was a Trojan horse thing. We were in plain clothes, and just went bad. But friends of mine that got hurt, friends of mine that got shot, friends of mine that were killed in the line of duty, and I had myself, cumulative trauma caught up to me, and I was having nightmares, and I was having trouble sleep, and I was drinking more than I should have, and all these things I'm talking about. I've lived through a lot of this, and now really what I'm trying to do is help my brothers and sisters that are out there, because post-traumatic stress is not a life sentence. Let's get people through this, let's get them healthy, and show people that, you can be well, and that there's a lot of resources out there, and it's okay to come forward and talk, because everybody's afraid to talk about it. Including myself at the time, I was the peer support coordinator for the department. I knew every resource that was available to me, but I was still even afraid of my own reputation and all the excuses and the layers that we put up. I got help on the outside, but I would have been the first person that somebody would have called when they needed help, and I would have done anything to help them. And there would have been 50 people that I could have called and said, this is what's going on, I need help. And all these people would have helped me. But the problem is we don't get out of our own way. And I know what that looks like. And it can be really damaging.
It can be, and that's super interesting. I'm just like you, cut from the same cloth, rubbed dirt on it my whole career, but I struggled. When did you finally seek out? And the reason why I ask is because of that stigma. It still exists. We are breaking down some barriers, but how do you overcome that? What would be your recommendation on how to overcome that stigma? And then at what point in your career did you overcome it, or was it after you retired?
No, it was, so I had about 23 years on or so, 24 years. And so in 2013, from 13 to 15, I had nightmares every night for 2 years straight. And this is, all of the, work and stuff that I'd done operationally, saw a lot of violence, saw a lot of all the things that, first responders see in the community. My wife had gone through breast cancer treatment. And so that was really rough. I had a really bad injury where I nearly got paralyzed in an accident. It was an off-duty thing, but and then all just the trauma of the job, and it's this cumulative thing. It's not just one thing, because it's just not the way it works. It was just 20 plus years of all of those traumas, right? And then what happens is that I just got numb. Nothing bothered me anymore, and I started withdrawing. I couldn't sleep. I became very hypervigilant. There was a lot of other things going on in the community, in the world. The Texas officers that got ambushed, the Dallas 5. Something happened in Louisiana where there's other officers. So what happens is that when you have hypervigilance, you have all this trauma, now all of a sudden your head's on a swivel. You can't go to a restaurant. When you're a cop in uniform, it's hard to just relax and eat your lunch or eat your dinner when you're in a crowded restaurant, because you don't want to be caught slipping. You don't mean it. And what I mean by that is that you feel like you have to always be paying attention to your surroundings, because anything could be a threat at any time. And if you can't switch that off, then your brain is just going all the time. All right. And so I had gotten to that point where I couldn't switch it off by myself. It just was there all the time. And I had called to schedule a counseling appointment, and then something happened, like where the therapist needed to reschedule, and I'd be like, well, screw it, forget it then. I just wouldn't call back. And finally I was in a training, and there was a therapist up there talking about, and I knew this girl. I had been to a bunch of meetings with her in my work as a CIT coordinator. And she was talking about veterans, dealing with veterans out in the community and mental health stuff. And she wrote her name and her phone number, said, hey, if anybody ever needs anything, call me. Well, I wrote her phone number down, and I called her after the training. I said, here's what's going on. What happened is that I trusted that person. I felt like I could trust her to tell her this big secret that I had that, I wasn't ready to tell anybody. So I called her and I said, hey, could you maybe give me a couple of numbers of somebody that you think I should call? And she did. I did talk therapy for about 6 months. And what happens, I just talked about, what these different things were. Went back over some of these critical incidents. And I did something called EMDR, which is called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And after about 2 sessions of that, I stopped having nightmares. And that, for those of you that don't know, it's essentially a modality that helps unlock trauma. Is what I just describe it there's a more complicated explanation, but through bilateral stimulation, it helps kind of, I call it unlocking trauma. What happened is that I started sleeping at night, and I stopped having the nightmares. And then I got into extreme ownership, and then I started going to this training, and I was doing a lot of stuff. I just wanted to physically improve myself, become a better leader, be a better husband, be a better father, do all those good things. And I just started feeling better. But there was years and years where I really didn't feel well, because I just had this kind of cloud around me where I just was kind of unhealthy for a couple of years.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I'm observing through what you're saying is, like, number one, you have to want to try to get better.
Yes.
So when we talk about breaking down that barrier with stigmas, number one, it sounds like, it'd be helpful if, you want it so bad enough that you'll call a number on the board, or whatever the case. The second takeaway that I heard was trust. So you have to, it's helpful to know who you want to seek help from. And so, what would be your recommendation for people listening that may be struggling with something like, with that trust piece? Because you know how it is in the agency, how you trust people with your life in the field, but you don't necessarily trust them on other matters.
You will go to a shots fired call with multiple victims down and make a hasty entry into a building with the people that show up with you without second guessing it, because that's what you're trained to do in an emergency. And if you feel confident that, you can, that you know what to do. And even if you're really scared, you're going to go and do it, right? And for the firefighters, they'd rather walk into a burning building than go to a counselor's office and sit in the chair and talk to them about their feelings. So the two things is like when you brought up like about getting out of your own way is that I think that the biggest leadership challenge or the first thing you got to do is that the first person you have to lead is lead yourself. And that's what I'm going to talk to people about tomorrow. Like this is a leadership training. And this isn't about you being in charge of the department or having 10 people on your team. The first person that you have to lead is lead yourself. Yes. Right? Because the better and healthy you are, people will see that. They're going to mimic the good behavior or the bad behavior. And then people will just see what you're doing and they'll follow you if they believe in you and trust you. And building trust with your teams, those are, longer conversations. But when I think about trust, like organizational trust, is that from the top, the chief of police, the captain, the sheriff, whoever those bosses are, is that you have to understand that your people need to feel comfortable coming to you with a problem. If they are afraid of you, there's the commander that I worked for, I called him Commander Sunshine. And it wasn't because he was like just such a happy person and wanted to be around him all the time. So I saved his contact in my phone. It said Commander Sunshine. What do you call him? We used to watch commander. But if you're in some kind of leadership capacity, or if you're doing peer support, or you just, in a work group, building trust with the people that you're responsible for is them knowing that you actually care about them. And that they should feel safe knowing that they can come to you if they have a problem and not checking a box. And there's some immaturity with some supervisors of where they're more worried about getting the operational things right. And they just don't have the life's experience maybe to understand the emotional intelligence piece of it. Yeah. Which I think it's just, you have to learn it over time. But I think that emotional intelligence piece is really important so that your people, if you talk to them about things, and if you can destigmatize yourself, say, hey, look, guys, that was a really tough call that we were on yesterday. If any of you need anything, please let me know. But not saying it in a sarcastic way, or not that people can tell when you're just checking a box. Yes. And you don't really mean it, or that, because one of my friends, he worked in San Luis Obispo County. His first day on the job, him and his training officer, his first day in uniform, they were on a man with a gun call, and this young man killed himself with a shotgun in the garage, and they witnessed it. He did it right in front. It's his first day on the job. First day as a deputy sheriff. Wow. So they manage, what do cops do? We manage crime scenes and we interview people, and the sergeant brings all those people together. It's like, hey, everybody good? Everybody good? You think he was going to say, no, I'm not good. This dude just blew his brains out in front of me, dude. Yeah. What's that young cop going to say? It's like, he's going to say nothing, I'm good to go, Sarge. Yep. Right? And this field supervisor was basically just like, probably didn't know what to do himself. It's like, hey man, everybody good? And it's being, okay, go back to work. It's like, let's go to the next call, right? It's crazy. And so we got to do better at that stuff. And so what I try and teach people is about thinking about what are they don't have to necessarily be a critical incident, but what are some kind of threshold type calls, pediatric deaths, a bad crime scene, something that'd be gruesome, suicide call. Do you have somebody that's going to a lot of traumatic calls that it's just to have somebody from peer support check in on them, just to, not to make it weird, just to check on them, see how they're doing. And as a supervisor, flagging some things that are where we just go, hey, this is just how our business is. Like when we have this particular type of call, I notify the peer support sergeant and say, hey, just want to let you know these 3 people, and this is the dispatcher that were on this, let's just use a pediatric death as an example. And can you have somebody from peer support just follow up with them and check in on them, right? Yeah. And you start to build that culture in your department, because there's a bunch of departments that they don't do that at all. They don't even get people together and debrief really, really bad stuff. They just have them write their reports and make sure they booked all their evidence and did everything, and then, go home and come back the next day. Like, it's just a fresh day. And those things start to stack on top of each other. Absolutely. Yeah. It's crazy. It's just like, you just nailed it for me anyways, where it just comes down to individual leadership. You are the CEO of your life. And if you recognize areas that you want to get better at or enhance,
taking those initial steps to improve. And then, like you said, people will see some changes and some tweaks and hopefully influence other people to try to do the same. And it would be nice if that all happened before they got to the rank of sergeant, because then they'd have those skills to address some of the things that you're talking about. Very challenging. Mm-hmm. You talk about when you identified during your career that you needed to get some help. You took the steps to get help. And so we're super curious from a risk management standpoint, only because the analytics that we're studying shows a specific indicator to health and wellness. And when folks aren't right and tight individually, or maybe even organizationally, decision-making can be a little off kilter and not meet the minimum standard, which, on a side note, minimum standard to me is mediocre, and mediocre don't cut it. But we're looking for, to exceed those standards. And so my question is once you identified that you wanted to get some help, you made some calls, you took some steps, did you notice anything about your thought process with specifically related to your decision making, whether it was, a relationship with somebody at work, or maybe something in your personal life, or a critical incident where you had to make timely decisions on the hop?
Yeah. So I think when you have an unhealthy, I'm going to say officer, because that's my background. So if you have an unhealthy officer, those are usually the people that are making poor decisions. Because if I look at myself, I was not sleeping well. So I got into this really long-term cycle of just being tired all the time, where, having brain fog and not feeling well. And then what that also translates into too is you may not have the compassion to deal with the public that you really need people to have. So if I put my community policing hat on, right, about where you try and think about, like, you'd want to treat people like they were taught. What if it was your grandmother that called 911, right? We all have that thing. But I got burned out. I was burned out, and I didn't realize until years after that what I had was burnout. But I know now that I had burnout, and what's happened is that I had this long exposure to trauma, and I hadn't addressed it. And one of the reasons why is that I think, if I'm being honest, I was afraid to deal with it. I had stuffed all that stuff down, and I was afraid if I opened up that trap door, that all that stuff was going to come out that I'm going to have to deal with, that I didn't want to deal with. I'm like, I'm going to do everything I can to just stuff it down and deal with it. And I was afraid that when I cracked that door open, that now I have to face it and actually deal with it. And there's work that you have to do. You have to put in work. So what I found is that my relationship got better with my wife. My relationship got better with my supervisors, and that you think that you're hiding it, but the problem is everybody else around you knows that it's happening. I've had so many people tell me, there's this girl that I worked with forever, and she's, we were in peer support together forever. And one day she told me, she said, for a long time, there was this black cloud around you. And
that's a dagger.
Right? And you have to sit there and think about that, well, what was it? Because my work performance is down. I'm going to go do the work that I need to do, but you may not be as proactive as you need to be because you just don't feel good. And then you also may not be the best person to be talking to people when they need somebody to show them some compassion, but that's when you see the cops getting the more complaints, right? You see that maybe a complaint start going up. You're like, this is not like Jim. Jim, doesn't normally behave like this, or they start coming in late, or that, you start things just start falling off. And I think the best thing that a leader can do is to, not in a threatening way, but like, hey, what's going on? This isn't like you. And they might not tell you in the beginning, but you can start the conversation. Sometimes they'll just let it go and say, oh, this is what's going on. Yeah. I'm so glad somebody finally asked me. Or it might take a little bit of time, right? Do they finally feel comfortable of like, hey, okay, here's what's happening, right? And you're coming from that caring, compassion, like, hey man, we love you, we care about you, you're not in trouble. I just, I know something's going on. And if you need somebody to talk to, I want you to know that I'm here to support you and help you. But life just got better for me. And I think that, my relation, I'm really blessed. Like I've been married to my wife for 37 years. We've been going out since 11th grade. And, there were some hard years there where I was not well. And my wife, it's like she was a cop's wife. This is what it is. And so feeling better, feeling healthy, being a better, officer, being a better supervisor. And, but when you don't feel good, you can make bad decisions. And when you have accidents that are happening at night where people, they're not sleeping well, or they've got a bunch of stress going on where they're distracted, that's when accidents happen, or that's when, bad things can potentially happen, or they start to stack on top of each other. So, and I think the biggest thing too is like, me getting out of my own way. Yes. I was the obstacle to getting the help that I needed because I knew what I needed to do. But as I said, if I'm being honest, I was afraid to do it because, okay, what is this? What do I have to, I don't understand it. What do I have to do? I know now I really understand. The last 10 years, I'm really heavily involved in mental health stuff for public safety. I get it now, but, I just had to get out of my own way. And then once I did that, being proactive, right? And there's so many, we could have a whole podcast on like, what does Jeff do for wellness now? I try everything. I just got the stellate ganglion block a week ago. I just was down in San Diego and, got it done for myself. And I'm proactive. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of really, really healthy modalities and things that can kind of stack on top of each other to help with cold plunge and sauna and all these different things. So I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely.
But if I didn't,
No, you absolutely hit the mark. This is why I think we connect so well, is because when you described like when you had your moment, your turning point, and then you took those steps and then you connected with Echelon Front, it damn near mirrors myself, bro. It's scary. But then when I realized I was in my own way, ego, right? And it was Echelon Front that kind of helped me get back on path, their principles, and then a bunch of other work that I did on myself. But
yeah.
I was late to the game. Never told anybody about it. I just retired quietly and sailed off. But then I realized I had all these problems and things were starting to unravel, but got it all patched up. Yeah. But it's people like you that are making a difference with, the masses. And that's what it's about. It's about learning things and not just keeping it to yourself, because you might as well not have learned anything if you're not sharing that information. And so now you're out there in the masses, bringing phenomenal speakers, culturally competent people, helping other people and hopefully helping their agencies.
Yeah, thank you. And I think once I got out of my own way, then I kind of became more of a champion for wellness because I wasn't afraid to talk about it with other people, because now somebody could be going through something and I wasn't afraid to say, hey man, I went through my own rough patch 2 years ago, because I worked 5 more years after when I did my initial counseling, I worked for 5 more years. And so it gave me a little bit of street cred, to go, and I was telling the truth of like, hey man, I've been where you are, and I understand, and just know that we've got resources to help you, or you can feel comfortable talking to me, because I understand, man. It's okay, it's normal. And I think normalizing this stuff for people. And when the last thing I wanted to say, we were talking, is that one day my assistant chief pulled me aside and he said he wanted to go have coffee with me, and I was a sergeant, and he said, tell me what you're doing, because what you're doing is different than what all the other sergeants are doing. So what have you been doing? He's like, what have you been doing? And so I told him a little bit about what I was doing. This is probably like maybe 2017 or something like that. And it's just, right. But for me, it was like one of my boss, they notice, and I'm hoping it was a good conversation. He was asking me from a good place, because you're doing something that's different than what the other sergeants are doing. And what is it? And why are you doing it? Right. And it was, he was just curious, and it made me feel good. It made me feel like, okay, maybe I am making a little bit of a difference here. And I hope that I can help in, whatever way that I can.
It's been a pleasure having you on the Good Karma podcast. Looking forward to tomorrow. Super excited about it. I always learn from the best. Tomorrow's got the best lineup, and we're going to have a good time.
It's going to be great. And don't forget victorymindset.com. Check us out. But I can't thank you enough for, all the support, and Karma has been incredible. And, what I'm happy about is that we're bringing, top tier training to your clients, and the officers, deputies, dispatchers, spouses that are going to be there tomorrow. They're going to have an amazing experience. And, it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for you, man.
Thanks, Jeff. Take care, brother.
Thanks, brother.
We'll see you tomorrow. Join us on August 18th, where we will be talking to the Capitola Police Chief, Sarah Ryan. Be sure to follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube so you stay connected to new conversations. And as always, if this episode adds value, share it with your team.